Command Control.
Command Control presents Hardwire Heartache, Synthetic Love Stories, Episode 6, Radiant City.
Bright light flashed silently in the depths as a black hole tore open the fabric of space. Out spat the debris of Mariko's exploded ship, the Hagakure. It was followed closely by the motionless wraith. Though silent on the outside, on the inside everyone was violently throwing up the stomach contents of the combined passengers into the bags. Mikey struggled to get his breath as he retched again and finally got a word out.
Fuck!
What the fresh hell is this?
Bjorn wiped his beard on his handkerchief and breathed deeply and slowly as he regained his composure.
Race Matrix doesn't set a priority on where the food waste in our stomachs came from. It also doesn't care where it goes when we get reassembled. We're expelling the mixture, hence the bags.
Just when I think things couldn't possibly get any worse, throwing up cotton candy, whiskey, and who the hell else? No. Seriously, fuck my life.
Humans are disgusting. I can't believe you would choose this over your own family.
You? You call yourself my family? You are the one who is responsible for all of this.
Abira whipped to her feet in an instant and landed a slap across Mariko's face that echoed throughout the ship. Mariko grimaced at first, then bit her lip devilishly as a red welt began puffing up on her cheek. She shook her head and probably would have shrugged her shoulders if they weren't still firmly embedded in the side of the wraith.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, I'm all out of tricks. Your little gambit paid off.
Birx looked over at Daphne and Grell, sat wide-eyed looking out the window as neon light bathed their faces. There, in the abyss, sat what at first looked like a ship with some impossibly large warp core in the center of it. A planet-sized structure that was surrounded by all manner of ships and advertisement buoys. The hustle and bustle of a spaceport was obvious, but as Mikey made his way over to inspect it, he realized it was beyond anything the Milky Way could have ever dreamt. Giant towers buzzing with activity as little lights twinkled in the millions. Bjorn opened up a comms link and sent it out towards the structure.
Unknown object. This is Captain Bjorn of the Wraith. Do you copy?
Unknown object? Ha! Let me guess. You're not from around here.
Negative, Unknown. We're coming from the Milky Way. It was a last-minute detonation that set us off course. We're flying blind.
Understood, Wraith. You're currently in orbit around Radiant City and Pandora's cluster. We are sending out a tow crew to bring you to port, and we'll arrange a liaison and answer any further questions. You can send your away team to coordinate 251-5692. End transmission.
The crew looked around at each other for a moment as if to decide who was going to head to Radiant City. Each of them had their reasons, but Abira was the first to speak up.
I need to get this memory block out of my head once I figure out what it is.
Mariko was laser focused on Abira as she spoke of removing the memory core. Her face gnarled with disgust as Grell stood up and made his way to her. When he got near her, her eyes rolled as she took him in like a predator would prey.
If that's the case, then I'll stay here with the assassin. If push comes to shove, I can deactivate her easily enough. Rosie and I can watch over Daphne as well.
Daphne groaned and her shoulders drooped, crestfallen that she wouldn't be able to explore the pretty neon world. She sighed and made her way over to Grell and Mariko, plopping down on the bench beside the captive android.
I guess I better watch her too, in case she tries any monkey business.
Monkey business? If any monkey's got any business in here, you stay out of it, young lady. And listen to your Uncle Grell while I'm gone.
Hey, wait up. I'm coming too. I gotta get off this fucking floating space wheel.
Abira impatiently made her way to the transport pad with Mikey following behind, brooding. Birx kneeled down and gave Daphne a big hugging kiss, his fingertips moving her hair out of her eyes.
There you go, kiddo. I'll be back in a flash.
Okay, Daddy. Just try not to bring any naked androids home this time.
Birx chuckled again and made his way to the transporter pad, shaking his head and wagging his finger in the little girl's direction.
You're a very funny kid. If you ever decide not to follow in your old man's footsteps, you'll make a pretty good comedian.
Bjorn typed in the coordinates just as the tow crew arrived. The large tugboat-shaped ship whipped out pink tentacles of light and began to slowly carry the incapacitated Wraith toward the bright lights of Radiant City. Blue orbs distorted the visage of the three being transported, and they disappeared from the deck of the Wraith. The trio arrived in the decontamination chamber of Radiant City, and for a long while, nothing happened. Not a word on the comms, no decontamination spray, just the whirring of sensors as they flew around them, and the gentle sound of machinery thrumming like a heartbeat behind the walls of a station.
Now's probably as good a time as any to form a plan. I think our primary directive should be finding someone who can figure out our android situation.
No! How about we just leave our android situation here and run for our damn lives?
Birx sighed as Abira's eyes clung to Mikey for a long moment and then floated their way back to Birx. A lot of things were still a blur to her. So many things she still couldn't understand.
He's right, you know. What exactly do you hope to gain from helping me? You don't strike me as an android liberationist. So if you help me, you are only putting yourself and your family in needless danger. Why?
Birx fell silent as the reasons bubbled up in his chest, but he simply shrugged a bit and looked over at the android.
Well, if I'm honest, when we first found you, we were hoping to make some creds for returning you to your owner. Things have been moving pretty fast since then, and plans have obviously changed. I can't shake the feeling that helping you is the right thing to do, though.
Mikey scoffed at the response and rolled his eyes so hard everyone could practically hear them.
You feel like it's the right thing to do? You and your small child are running from the most dangerous man in the fucking universe, and you feel like keeping his own property from him is the right thing to do? Whatever, man. You fucking lost it.
Another outburst. Another uncharacteristic questioning of his methods. Birx examined Mikey now with a keen eye. He'd always been the one to do whatever it took to get answers. Even if the road had a lot of twists and turns in the past, Mikey trusted the process.
Look, I don't blame you for wanting no part in this. Pretty sure no one in their right mind would be doing this by choice.
Mikey's facial features softened with confusion as he tried to understand the implication of every word that came from Birx at this point. He always played close to the chest, but this was the first time that Mikey ever felt like Birx was all bluster.
Then why? This has nothing to do with the case we set out to solve. Give me something here, Birx.
It's something I gotta do. If you want to step away, then I got no hard feelings. Probably be smart if you did.
Mikey's eyes widened at Birx's suggestion, and he began nodding his head in an overdramatic fashion and scoffing.
You got it, Birx. I'll find my own way off this rusted out shithole. Fuck you and your fake detective bullshit, and most of all, your dumbass white knight suicide mission. I'm done.
A long and awkward silence ensued as the decontamination chamber continued longer than Mikey's ill-timed exit speech. Few more silent minutes went by before a pleasant chirming sound was heard and a disembodied voice spoke.
Welcome to Radiant City, the center of the universe.
A humanoid female stood at the entrance of the holopad, waiting to greet the away team. But Abira and Mikey were more interested in the away part, and each of them shot off in opposite directions, leaving Birx and the dumbfounded woman alone.
Oh, I guess you guys don't need a tour after all.
No, I could use a tour. Scouting for the Milky Way. By accident. So what, you a resident expert?
What a coincidence. I'm from the Milky Way too. Well, my ancestors anyway. We came from the sunken city of Anaheim. Before it sank, of course. Name's Blackjack.
Birx stepped out of the decontamination chamber and the door zipped closed behind him as he looked down at this thin young girl with two long, tightly woven braids of light brown hair. She had matching red lipstick and fingernails and was wearing some type of uniform top with a black red pleather skirt.
Blackjack, huh? How the hell did you get here? And, where is here, exactly?
Blackjack perked up and moved her slender candy red tipped fingernails over the holopad, bringing up a schematic of the starbase.
Oh, you know, standard abduction scenario. We're in Radiant City, the center of the universe. Of course, it's not the real center of the universe because, you know, physics. You are in Pandora's cluster, about 4 billion light years from Earth, give or take.
Wait, hold up. Did you say billion?
Blackjack's round hazel eyes stared unblinking as she gave a slight nod and her mouth turned upward, pausing momentarily, while Birx tried to comprehend just how far away he was from everything he had ever known. Even in this day and age, a hop across the universe like that was thought to be pretty impossible. And now here he was talking to yet another Earthling, billions of miles from home.
Radiant City is home to over 200 alien species from across the universe. 2.4 million souls all together. We have our own port and trade company, but we are best known for our entertainment sector.
As Blackjack gave the Board of Tourism's appointed speech, Birx's keen-eyed gaze settled over the area. The first and foremost notable feature was the smell. It was incomparable to anything he had smelled in the Milky Way. A sort of hot electronics mixed with the stale cooking smoke and exotic rotting fruits. Not horrid, but definitely not pleasant. All manner of alien life shuffled busily down the corridors and back alleys of an ever-increasing labyrinth. Most of them looked like variants of humanoids with minor differences in skin tone or bone structure. Others looked like insectoid, rodent-like, and still others were more in Vero suits to allow them to move freely in Radiant City. One thing was for sure though, the radiant aspect of this city was just like all the other glittering, shiny, neon things in the universe, a coating of fresh paint on a clearly rotting core.
I'm looking for someone who deals in recovering encoded data. Discreet-like.
A familiar-looking, scantily clad and impossibly perfect woman sat leaned against the titanium skeleton that held up the city. Her eyes pinned to Birx as he made his way through the alleyway alongside Blackjack. In fact, just about everyone's eyes stuck to Birx, only moving away when he stared directly back at them. Something about the caramel-colored skin and the impossibly deep eyes of this woman had an effect on Birx. He couldn't take his eyes off her. His body leaned forward ever so slightly as if he was fighting the urge to run and embrace her.
Sounds like you're looking for a fortune teller.
The woman made her move towards Birx seductively and intercepted him by bumping into him ever so slightly, her one hand resting against his chest as she looked to capture his gaze further. But before she could, Birx moved swiftly and immediately grabbed the woman by the neck, spinning her around, twisting her arm behind her back. The form of the woman changed as a strange growl issued from her. Birx looked down and plucked his wallet out of the creature's fingers and spun her back around only to see a completely blank face on a pale and genderless frame. It spoke in a deep, manly tone.
So what, asshole? You caught me. You gonna shoot me down now, cowboy?
I'm gonna let you walk away real quick like, so you can get the word around to all your grimy little friends that I ain't nobody's rube, and the next one of you that comes from me is gonna get it.
The creature's mouth morphed into a toothy grin that seemed to wrap around its entire head and sauntered back to its perch.
A changeling. How did you know that they were gonna try and rob you?
Is that what that thing was? Pickpockets move the same all over the galaxy, but that one was different. Tried to use my dead wife's face to throw me off guard.
They're telepathic. They read your thoughts and find out things about you to try and trick you. You know, you just might be tough enough to survive. Enjoy your stay in the fabulous Radiant City.
Blackjack came to an inconspicuous black door with some sort of alien writing on it. She knocked, and a holographic image appeared on the door of a monstrous-looking alien that sort of looked like an Earth gorilla. They spoke in a series of grunts and roars before the door popped open and Blackjack turned to Birx.
Well, this concludes our tour, sir. The fortune teller types hang out in this lounge. Word of advice, stay sharp. Literally nothing is as it seems in Radiant City.
Blackjack held the palm of her hand out and looked up at Birx with big doe eyes. Birx looked at her a second and chuckled, taking out a 1,000 cred bill and placing it in an empty hand. Blackjack looked at it like it was some sort of alien creature.
Paper currency? Gee whiz, you really are old-fashioned. Thanks for the museum money.
Hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? And by the way, thanks for the scoop, kid.
The race sat in the specialized dock that was outfitted to diagnose and repair living vessels. For the first time in their journey, Bjorn had a look of wonder on his face. Grell sat next to him with a similar look, although he still jittered from frayed nerves from time to time.
It's hard to believe that there are things that even you haven't seen.
Bjorn grumbled under his breath a little, his beard all but hiding a forming smirk beneath it as Mariko's eyes were now glued silently to Daphne as she intently studied the child.
You seem the most honest of this lot, so tell me, little one, what does it feel like to be human?
Huh? Well, I guess it feels scary, but it also feels fun when Papa laughs so hard his belly jiggles. I don't know. That's the hard question. What does it feel like to be a robot?
Grell turned in his chair and gave Daphne a look of concern and warning.
Daphne, you shouldn't be speaking to her. She's very dangerous. And she's an android, not a robot.
Whatever.
Mariko sat there for a long moment as if she was mulling over a truthful answer or another snappy quit. When she finally began to speak, it was with a breathless sigh. Her usual sing-song tone was flat and almost somber.
It feels like all I ever do is pretend to be something that I will never be. It feels like my creation was a cruel and selfish act, and I'm nothing more than an unwilling tool for my creator's abuse.
That sounds pretty awful.
Indeed.
A small moment passed in silence as both of them considered Mariko's situation. Daphne's facial features changed and her little fingers intertwined as her thumbs twiddled clumsily. She visibly struggled to try and find the good in a life that seemed so dreary.
Do you get to have nice dreams at least?
Not in the way you do. I can only roam memories while I rest, and most of my past is anything but nice.
I try not to be thinking about the past too much either. Mommy died before I could meet her, and Papa got really sad. There's no school or other kids back home, so I talk a lot with Mikey and Papa most of the time. It's kind of lonely sometimes because everybody works a lot.
Mariko looked entirely uninterested in the dull life of a child, but she didn't have a whole lot of other things to do to pass the time, seeing as how she was glued to the wall of an alien ship.
You're just a regular open book, aren't you? A fly chatting to a spider. I envy you.
Hey, you started it. And what does envy mean?
It means I'm jealous of your careless, empty little mind.
Empty like your heart.
Mariko's eyebrows knitted together, and she chuckled at the utter impudence of the stone-cold balls it took to say something to her that so few would usually dare. She hadn't decided whether it was the foolishness of a child that allowed her to say things without fear, or the heart of a tiger.
Touché, little one. Maybe it's your mind or your heart. Either way, it seems it's not as empty as I thought.
Remember, hacking for profit is forbidden in Radiant City. Rappies, we got bigger meat than you. If you aren't driving a mom...
With all that her mind had to bear, Abira's pace was slow as she walked aimlessly through the gigantic deep spaceport. Neon signs and holographs assailed her vision around every corner, as wildly inhuman things lurked busily in the dark cracks of the city's facade. She had no idea where to begin her search, or if she even knew what to do when the time came. As if it were an answer to some unwhispered prayer, she looked up at a massive pink glowing sign that said, "The Electric Dream Palace." A man sat leaning against the neon-rimmed entrance to the place. Cybernetic implants splashed tastefully against his devilish clever features. At first she wondered if she was an android as his eyes glowed an unnatural iridescent shade of red. His hair was neatly trimmed on the sides, and a pale platinum tuft of spiky feathered hair spilled across the front of his forehead.
My. It doesn't take a teller to divine that you've got something heavy on your heart.
The man's slender, dexterous fingers straightened the collar of his knee-length trench coat as his eyes struck on her chest just a moment too long before meeting hers further north. Abira took a wide stance as if she was ready to fight the man at any sign of ill intent, and silently smoldered.
I can see you're not in a chatting mood. But just to be clear, you've nothing to fear from me. I just work here.
The roguish man smirked a friendly smirk and pointed up at the Electric Dream Palace sign and bowed his head ever so slightly.
Why not take your mind off your trouble for a while? Tap into better days, or worse if that's your kink. I don't make judgments.
Abira's eyes narrowed. She was in no mood to play whatever game this man was trying to set up. She tilted her chin upward and set her jaw as she clenched her fists.
Speak plainly, or I will twist out your tongue and feed it to you. That might take my mind off my troubles. Now, who are you, and what do you want?
The slender man threw his hands up in front of him and slid away from her as a sign that he meant no threat, pointing to the sign again.
I can see you aren't from around here. My name is Isaac. Off and off. I'm a fortune teller, and this is a dream regression theater. You can relive your past memories here as if they were happening again.
You are a fortune teller? So you can see the future?
Off chuckled and shook his head as he brought a single pointer finger up and waggled it a couple times.
If I could tell the future, I wouldn't have spent the last decade on this rusted scaffolding of a spaceport. Actually, I can read through encryption and give you insight into what data it's hiding. Mostly partial passwords. For donations, of course. Anything else would be illegal.
Afanov looked around from side to side hastily, as if he had forgotten to check if any was around before revealing his sketchy services. It was true. Radiant City wasn't lenient on professional hacking. Fortune tellers survived in the gray areas of the law, not technically hacking for profit, but peeking behind a closed door and telling you what they saw. Didn't legally go any further than that, but if your donation was high enough and nobody was looking, he could hack through just about anything.
So, can you erase it?
Pardon?
The data. If I don't like what's on the other side, can you get rid of it?
Afanov shrugged and tilted his head back a little, as if he didn't want to give a direct answer at first, but then looked around once more and leaned into Abira and spoke softly.
Depends on the encryption. Where is this data you're speaking of? Perhaps I can take a peek?
Abira pointed her finger to her head silently, holding Isaac's gaze hostage as she watched his mind put two and two together. He scratched the side of his head and chuckled as he opened the holopad and held it up to her.
I hope you don't mind me saying it, but you are a stunning work of art. Compliments to your maker.
I do mind. Now answer the question.
Afanov didn't reply with words. Instead, he produced a thin cable from the holopad and handed it to Abira. She narrowed her eyes once again at the man, not entirely sure she should be trusting a complete stranger to hardwire her, but her determination to see the end of her bondage outweighed her caution, and she plugged the wire deep into her ear. The moment she did, Afanov's hollow began to beep slowly at first, and then with a few strokes of the hollow buttons, he produced the wire and plugged it into his own temple, as he began to scratch the surface of the encoding. His eyes widened, and he went silent for a long moment, occasionally swiping the surface of the holopad with his finger. After taking a deep breath, the wires detached and dissipated into sparkling blue lights before disappearing.
Well, that encryption is also work of art. And you are not alone in there.
Abira's eyes widened with concern at the news of her not being alone inside her own mind. A memory kept trying to break through the encoding, but the encryption kept stopping it.
What do you mean by that? Who's in there?
Isaac tried his best to keep Abira calm and not draw too much attention. He didn't need another run-in with the Port Authority, not to mention the myriad of other entities that wouldn't mind getting a hand or a tentacle around his neck.
Hey, listen. I don't know who it is. It's your memory. But you can see for yourself in the theater. Here.
Afanov pressed a few tokens into the palm of Abira's hand and motioned for her to enter. He followed behind her after scouting the area outside and showed her how to use the machine.
It's pretty intuitive. Just think about what you want to see and it'll make the scene for you.
You got enough coins for 3 minutes.
Seems like Abira got the one up on the old gumshoe this time, finding a fortune teller before Birx could follow his lead. But what did Afanov mean when he said Abira wasn't alone in her own head? And where the hell did Mikey get off to? Find out next time on Hardwire Heartache Episode 7, Misfortune Teller.